Hello everyone, I am OSW-Sim-Sports. I have been sim racing for the last 20 years. And it's not just something I like doing, it's literally part of my DNA. I started out when I was around 5 years old. I have been an LFM Top 100 driver and I have had one of the strangest journeys throughout sim racing you can imagine. If you would like to know a little bit more about me personally, check out this video. But more importantly, over the years I have coached and taught many people taking their first steps in sim racing. And honestly, I am absolutely obsessed with anything that has 4 wheels, and it is from this passion that I want to show and share my knowledge about driving with you guys. Welcome to Fundamentals to Speed, a complete course built on one principle. Master the fundamentals and the speed will come. Most beginners seem to try to learn ideal racing lines and advanced techniques before they can even hit their braking marks. They are essentially trying to build a roof without having built the foundation first. And this course is about fixing that, teaching you the systemic approach that will actually make you fast, not just give you theory that you can't execute on. So, if you're struggling to be consistent, if you are struggling to find pace, or if you are just starting out with sim racing and want to build the right habits from the get-go, this course is for you. And with that all out of the way, let's get started. And just quickly, before we begin, this course is completely free. No sponsors, no ads, no hidden costs and 0 registration required. In a world full of grifters selling overpriced courses and providing no value, I am giving you this entire course for free at 0 cost. Whether you are on a controller or a top-of-the-line direct drive wheelbase, whether you are playing Gran Turismo, Le Mans Ultimate, iRacing or any other sim racing title, this course will teach you the fundamental skills that separate fast hot lappers from consistent, competitive sim racers. And in the next parts we will cover everything that you will need to know to go from a total beginner to a top 1% sim racer, and whether you will actually get there is basically down to how much you actually practice and how much time you will put in. And I try to structure this course in a way where every skill builds on the last, so don't skip ahead. Even if you already think you know about vision, braking or whatever, I am pretty sure there will be 1 or 2 tricks you might pick up along the way. And just to quickly mention, you do not need expensive equipment. Whether you have a controller, whether you are driving on an entry-level wheel, or maybe you even have a nice direct drive setup, the fundamentals in this course apply to absolutely everyone. And for part 1 or chapter 1, we are starting off with vision. And we are starting off with vision because it's essentially the foundation that everything else starts to build on, and it is also the skill that beginners seem to struggle the most with. Simply put, you cannot brake correctly if you are not looking at the right markers, you cannot race wheel to wheel if you are not scanning for other cars and your surroundings, but master this and you will be quicker, more consistent, and most importantly, you will actually finish races. Because of course, as a wise man once said, to finish first, you first have to finish. And in this video you will learn 3 absolutely critical vision skills. First, the depth perception problem, and why judging speed in the sim is more difficult than in real life and how to eventually overcome it. The 6-step vision cycle, where to look during each phase of a corner. And lastly, scanning. In my opinion, the most underrated skill that actually separates good racers from great racers. And so let's just dive right in. Here's the issue. In sim racing, you can't judge the speed and distance as accurately as you can in real life. In a real car, your body feels the G-forces, your peripheral vision picks up motion blur and stuff around you, and high speeds feel genuinely scary. If you have ever been on a racetrack where someone is actually pushing, yeah, it is quite scary, and sometimes you think like there's no way you can actually make that corner, but then the driver just shows you that he easily can. And not only are you feeling the G-forces, because the car is vibrating around you, every sense in your body is tingling at maximum capacity. While in the sim, you are basically just sitting still in your chair, comfortably chilling in your own home. And yes, there are motion sims and motion rigs, etc. But trust me when I say that it is never as good as the forces you feel in real life. So simply put, in sim racing, your brain has to work with like 50% of the information that it would have in real life, and as a result, vision is extremely important. And this isn't something where I can just give you a quick tip and it will be instantly fixed. No. This is something that you will have to learn and that your brain will slowly start to adapt to. We are essentially trying to recalibrate our brains in terms of what it means to go 200 kilometers an hour or 120 miles an hour without having any G-forces acting upon our body or any of the fear. We just have to deduce this information from what we feel from the force feedback, what we hear in our headphones, and what we see on our monitor. This adaptation takes time. Hundreds, maybe thousands of laps. And your brain slowly learns that if I brake here, if I shift down to this gear and I hear this engine note, I can safely steer into the corner and it will stick. And therein also lies the solution. Markers and reference points. Simply put, consistency will speed up your learning massively, and you will get this consistency by using references. And so we want to get to a point where instead of braking when it feels right, we brake at the same marker at the same place every time. Maybe it's some specific advertiser board, it's a edge of the curb, it's a distance sign, or just the general brake marker. Anything can be used as a marker as long as it's not a shadow. And by then using these markers, your brain will slowly start building the connection that if I brake at this marker for this long and I wait until the engine RPM hits this note, I will make the corner. And this is also exactly what racing coaches teach. Many coaches recommend starting with very early markers and progressively braking later and later each lap until you find your sweet spot, using concrete reference points over just feeling alone every time. Even though while this block primarily focuses on visual markers, your brain also subconsciously uses audio information as well. The gear you are in loosely tells you your speed range, while the engine RPM tone tells you your position within that range. And over time you will develop a sixth sense that will tell you, I'm in 4th gear with the engine at this pitch, I am approaching the corner with the correct speed. And while I would recommend not to focus on this too much early on, but please keep in mind that actually listening to the car is a crucial part of driving a car quickly. Luckily, your brain will just subconsciously pick up all this information as you go along, so you don't really have to focus on it that much, just drive and the speed perception will come. And here is something crucial that most seem to miss. Markers are not just for braking. Every time's action, such as steering in, going on the brake, going back on the throttle, can and even should have a reference point or a marker if it helps you to be more consistent. And for a simplified example, for a turn-in marker, once you pass that reference point, you would start turning into the corner. For an apex marker, it's generally the point you are steering towards. And I personally also use throttle application markers. So for example, at Spa-Francorchamps in the Bruxelles corner, once I see the 3rd AstroTurf thingy on the inside of the corner, I go back on the throttle. And then we also have exit markers that once you actually start getting out of the corner, your corner exit marker will be the place where you are actually steering to at this point, and you obviously want to maximize all of the road that is available in order to get the most out of your traction. And lastly, sometimes there are also setup markers where you want to position your car on a specific side on the track where you actually start seeing the curbing on the left or right hand side of the track, or when you see a specific marker, and that just guarantees that you have the optimal setup during the braking zone and when turning into the corner. In some corners you will need only 1 or 2 markers, while in complex sequences you might actually need 5 or 6. And just as a quick note, gear selection is a hard reference, just like a braking board. When a coach or someone tells you, always take this corner in second gear, that means you are targeting a specific speed range for every lap. And most of the time you are only targeting the upper half of the gear's RPM range. And so knowing what gear you are in or what gear you are going to shift down to, and the tone you are hearing from the engine is actually crucial information to accurately judge your speed. And just to stress here, the point of markers is not to turn driving into a checklist. It is to give yourself reliable reference points while your brain builds the intuitive sense of how fast the car can actually go. And on top of that, these markers and reference points are basically one of the few tools we can actually use as drivers to explain to others what we are actually doing while driving the car.
Stay left, little brake, downshift twice, and then third gear tight on a curve on the exits. Okay, now we need to stay right completely and straight line the braking so you get the best possible deceleration.
For them, and hopefully for you in the future, every phase of a corner and the action that has to be taken in that phase of the corner has a solid reference marker. And as you gain experience, you naturally just stop thinking about most of these markers, but you are still using them. But in the beginning, use them everywhere they help. They're essentially just scaffolding for building speed and consistency. There are 2 ways to find your reference points on a new track: underdriving or overdriving. Overdriving means pushing too hard, too soon, on purpose. Braking late, carrying too much speed, discovering your limits and the limits of the car by crashing and having off-track excursions. It feels aggressive and committed, but it's actually the slower path to improvement. Each crash will cost you track time. Every trip to the gravel means resetting your rhythm. And yes, you are finding where the limit is, but it is also at the cost of consistent repetitions that actually build consistent skill. And then we have the very unglamorous underdriving. Underdriving means starting conservative and slowly, methodically pushing your markers later and later, lap after lap. Brake early at first, maybe 150 meters, make the corner cleanly. Next lap, brake at 125, still okay, next lap 100 meters. Keep pushing your markers forward until you find the edge, but always try to stay on track. Of course, we all know in the back of our mind that we are just sitting at home and we can reset the car at any time. But try to imagine yourself in a scenario where you are driving this car in real life at a real track with someone watching you, and you will suddenly start driving in a total different manner. But the following point is absolutely critical to learning quickly. Underdriving does not mean going slow or being inconsistent. One slow corner exit compromises your next corner entry and braking zone, and suddenly your reference points don't work anymore because you are arriving at different speeds. What you ideally want is consistent laps that build on each other, where you are going faster and faster in a controlled progression. Each lap you should push yourself to your current capability, just not beyond it. You're not just babying around and having a nice tourist drive. You're driving clean, complete laps at 90%, then 92%, then 95%, and systemically approaching the limit. And this approach, while boring, is by far the most efficient. You will improve faster, you will build better habits, and develop a more accurate sense of the car's limits. The goal is not to drive slowly, the goal is to build speed through consistency. And here is a fun aspirational benchmark. Max Verstappen, the sim god himself, has a personal rule that when learning a new track, 5 laps and he needs to be on the pace. 5 laps to find his markers, understand his rhythm and be competitive. That is the elite level that these drivers operate at. And you are not there yet, and that's fine, I am also not there. But it shows what is possible when you have trained your brain to process track information quickly and efficiently. With practice, you'll get faster and faster at finding your markers too. But even for Max Verstappen, those first 5 laps start conservative and build methodically. He's not crashing his way to speed. Just imagine how much money that would actually cost. Watching track guides or laps from some alien can be very helpful extra information when learning a new track. But please, approach them carefully, especially in the beginning. The techniques, tricks and lines that fast drivers use can be very misleading without proper explanation. Either they are exploiting car-specific characteristics, using setups that you don't have, or they might be using tricks and techniques that you haven't developed yet. Just blindly copying what you see the aliens doing without understanding why they are doing it can actually slow down your learning. And in my opinion, the most effective approach is to try the track yourself first. Build your own markers, find your own rhythm and develop your own baseline. And then once you actually hit the wall in terms of learning, that is the moment that you should watch onboards and track guides and just see where your own approach differs from theirs and understand what you might be doing wrong. You will have some context for what you are actually seeing from the driver, and you can incorporate what they are showing you in a smart way that is applicable to you. Once you have learned the track and you have learned and found your natural limits, if you really want to go fast, there is one more phase, seeing if there's anything more in the tank. And this is the moment where mistakes become useful data points. You might brake a little bit later than normal, you might carry a little bit more corner speed, or you might go back on the throttle a little bit more early and more aggressive. Deliberately experimenting around the edge of the limit of the car is a fantastic way to find those final tenths of pace. But this is absolutely critical. This should only happen at the end of your learning process, not the beginning. It's simply essential to have already found the natural flow, the rhythm of the track first, then build consistency and establish some solid baseline markers, and only then is it actually productive to see if there's anything more in the tank and maybe find a few more tenths. And just as an example, this is exactly what you see in Formula 1 during FP3. The drivers are on their final practice session before qualifying. They already know the track, of course, they have done some sim work, but they have built their baselines and now they are testing the absolute edge, which is why you will see so many lockups. They are essentially deliberately pushing past their established brake markers to see if there's any more speed available. Even if that means destroying a set of tires in an instant, that is fine. This is the moment to actually find this space. And here is something that makes learning new tracks even more valuable. The time you invest is never wasted. When you learn a track in one car or a class, that knowledge that you gained about the track or maybe even that specific type of corner transfers remarkably well to other cars and other tracks. And so really, each time you learn a new combination of car and track, you can learn it quicker and quicker and the process becomes easier and easier. Because strangely enough, braking markers, turning points, apex targets, track out zones, all of these references stay largely consistent across different classes. And yes, of course, there will be differences. A GT3 car might brake at the 100 meter board, for example, while a Formula car brakes at the 75 or maybe even 60 meter board. But the relationship between those markers actually remains the same. The corner structure doesn't change and the racing line also doesn't really shift. And what this essentially means in practice is that if you have learned SPA in a GT4 car, for example, switching to a GT3, a touring car or a Mazda MX-5 does not mean starting from scratch, and now also learning a new track in the GT4 will also become easier. But if you're just trying a different car on the same track, the track is already familiar, you will recognize the corners, you will know the flow and understand the rhythm. You just need to adjust your markers slightly for the new car, and that adjustment happens quickly because your brain already has the framework. But there's an even more valuable benefit happening in the background as well. Every lap you drive, your mental library of what cars can actually do expands and builds. How hard can you brake without locking up the rear axle? How quickly does the speed scrub off mid-corner? How much can you turn while braking? And how early can you get back on the throttle? And simply put, these aren't questions that you can simply answer. They are intuitions that you build over hundreds and thousands of corners and laps. Each car, each track and each lap, and I would even add each game you play, adds data points to your internal model of vehicle dynamics. And you absolutely don't have to become a vehicle dynamics nerd like me, but over time your brain will develop an increasingly accurate sense of what's actually possible. And this knowledge is completely transferable. Between cars, between tracks, between classes, between games, and even between real life and sim racing. And for me personally, it doesn't matter whether I learned it at Suzuka or Monza or at Spa, in a GT car or in a prototype, in a Formula, you are training the same fundamental skills. Understanding the relationship between speed, braking and cornering. So, learn tracks, learn cars, learn classes, learn lots of them. The knowledge will compound and every next thing you learn will become easier and quicker. Sadly, not all corners fit the clean reference and marker narrative that we have used so far. Some corner sequences, like Maggots and Beckets at Silverstone, Lecombe and Malmedy at Spa, the S's at Suzuka, don't really have discrete braking points or turn-in markers. They will have some reference here and there, but they mostly flow together as one continuous high-speed commitment, where you're constantly adjusting and balancing the car and reacting to what it's telling you. And it's especially in these corners where you will be relying much more on feel and car control than hard reference points. In the middle of the sequence, you are not thinking brake here, turn here. No, you are feeling the weight transfer, sensing the grip levels and making micro corrections on the fly based on what the car is doing underneath you. This is where good drivers make the biggest difference. We will be devoting a significant amount of time on these types of corners in the driving technique chapter, simply because they require a completely different skill set. They are more about developing an intuitive feel with the car rather than executing a memorized sequence, or rather playing Guitar Hero. But the foundation we are building now, the systemic approach, the consistency and the mental calibration, that is what makes developing feel actually possible. And I cannot stress this enough, you cannot learn to drive by feel if you haven't first learned to drive with structure, especially in sim racing. The 6-step vision cycle is essentially just finding references for each phase of a corner. By doing this, your eyes will glide smoothly across the screen as you are driving, and your car and your body will naturally want to steer to the direction you are looking. Let's break down each of these 6 steps and look at it a bit more in depth. Before you even begin a corner sequence, 2 critical decisions need to be made. Where will you brake and what gear will you be in at the end of braking? These aren't really things you figure out mid-corner. They are things that you prepare and anticipate for before you even arrive at the corner sequence. And the absolute most important reference or marker is your braking point, as it is the foundation of everything that follows after. Brake too early and you will arrive at the corner with too little speed, compromising both your line through the corner and compromising your exit speed, which will then cost you all the way down the straight. Brake too late and you either fly off the track, or you might have to scrub off more speed in the corner than you want, costing you speed and time as a result. This is why for brake markers it's very important that these are concrete reference points. a distance board, a specific curb, a track marshal post, a painted barrier, or a track surface change. And then you simply tell yourself, I brake once I pass this point. Simple, repeatable, and there's no guessing involved. And with modern games, never use shadows as reference markers. They move throughout the day as the sun changes position, and they will become completely unreliable. As you approach your braking zone, you're tracking your marker visually. As you move closer to your marker, your eyes will faster and faster shift towards it, and the second your marker leaves the screen or exits your peripheral vision, that is when you brake. You don't brake at the marker while looking at it, you brake when you pass it. That will give you the most accurate timing. This will greatly help with repeatability and make sure that you get your car stopped before the corner begins. Now, this isn't really a step of the 6-part vision cycle, but it is still something you are doing while you are braking, and as a result, gear selection works hand in hand with your braking marker. And in cars with significant engine braking, and especially if they have ABS like GT3 cars, it's absolutely critical to your braking performance. When you say, I take this corner in second gear, most of the time the gear isn't just a choice, it's a speed target. Second gear typically covers around 60 to 120 km an hour, and if you know you're taking a corner in second, you know you need to brake until your engine tone hits the upper range of that gear. So if you're entering a corner in second, that means you are entering the corner at roughly 100 km an hour or 60 miles an hour, and this again is where the audio cues come back into play. But here is what many beginners seem to miss. In cars like GT3 with ABS, engine braking is a massive part of your total braking performance. The more revs your engine is doing, the more friction it will provide, leading to extra braking performance. So, by doing click 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 rapid fire downshifts from 6th down to 2nd, exploiting the engine braking as much as possible will slow you down more quickly than just normal downshifts. If you downshift any slower than that, or you stay in too high a gear for too long, you will simply miss the corner. The brakes alone are not enough for some braking markers. That's why you're not just selecting a gear, you're using the transmission as a braking tool. Hit your brake marker, immediately start hammering through the downshifts and arrive at turn-in at your target gear with the car stable at the right speed. Please note that if you are driving cars without ABS, this will most likely lead to massive spins, as your rear axle will lock up, sending your car in a slide. When you nail your braking point and gear selection, the rest of the corner becomes smooth and natural. You arrive at a turn-in at the correct speeds, which means mid-corner you are mostly coasting or applying very smooth throttle. The car is balanced, predictable and flowing through the corner. And then compare this to what beginners do when they get their entry speed wrong. They tend to use a very jerky start-stop style. They arrive too fast, have to brake mid-corner, which then upsets the car. They get back on the throttle too aggressively, trying to make up the time and the speed. Then they have to brake again because they're running wide, and it's choppy, it's inconsistent and it's slow. But simply getting your entry speed right through proper brake markers and gear selection eliminates all of that. You will notice that you're not fighting the car through the corner, you're working with it, maintaining the smooth inputs and carrying much more speed as a result. You might notice we haven't talked about geometric racing lines, ideal apex points or racing theory, and that is deliberate. If you cannot execute the fundamental actions effectively, racing line theory is useless in my opinion. What is good about knowing the theoretical ideal racing line if you arrive at every corner with the wrong speed, with the wrong gear and inconsistent braking points? You will be so busy fighting the car and managing your speed that you can't execute the line anyway. And this is exactly why we are starting with markers, references, preparation and just providing you the tools to actually build consistency. These are seriously the foundations that make everything else possible. Once you can reliably hit your braking points, nail your gear selection and arrive at corners at the correct speed with smooth inputs, then we can talk about optimizing your line. Because at that point you will actually have the control and consistency to implement racing line theory effectively. In my opinion, too many beginners try to learn the perfect line first and then wonder why they're slow and inconsistent. It's because they're trying to build a roof before the foundation. Get these fundamentals locked in first and the speed will come. Unlike your braking marker and gear selection, which are hard, fixed references you decide before the corner, your turning point is more fluid. It's essentially a moment in time when the car has slowed to the right speed and not just a fixed point on the track. This is where listening to the engine also becomes crucial. As you're braking and downshifting, the engine tone is telling you how much speed you're carrying. And you are essentially feeling for that moment when the car has scrubbed off enough speed and that it will rotate as expected when you turn in. And yes, you can of course establish a reference. I established at that curb seam, for example, but unlike your braking marker, this one will require adaptation on the fly. Just for some examples, maybe you braked slightly early and you already arrived with less speed than expected. Maybe you missed the downshift and you have more speed than usual. Maybe the track conditions changed and grip levels are just different. Your turning point needs to adjust based on what's actually happening, not just following a fixed set of actions. And that is also why turn-in is more of a feeling thing. You're essentially just asking yourself, how long have I been braking since my marker? What does the engine tone tell me about my current speed? And does the car feel ready to rotate? And based on the feedback that you are getting from the car, you will be making micro adjustments in order to keep it on track and to make sure that you can actually turn into the corner when you want it to. And in an ideal world, your turning point is essentially a geometry problem. You want to begin rotating the car at the moment where the balance between corner entry speed and exit speed gives you the highest average speed throughout the corner. Turn in too early and you will have to slow down more mid-corner and you will run out of track on exit. Turn in too late and you will have to take a wider line through the apex, scrubbing off more speed in order to correct this and then compromising your exit on the straight. And this is the thing that you are trying to calibrate when you are first learning a corner. You are essentially just asking yourself, if I turn in here, can I hold this speed through the apex and still get the car stable for a good exit? But of course, you can only optimize this geometry if you are arriving at consistent entry speeds. And this also circles back to why brake markers and gear selections are so critical. If your corner entry speed differs by something like 10 km an hour for every corner in every lap, your actual turning point will have to shift by meters to actually compensate for this. And you won't be able to develop a consistent feel for the corner. Get your braking and gearing consistent first, and then your turning point will become very easy, and from there on we can start working on optimizing the geometry. It's your geometric anchor, the point you want to rotate around, not rotate into. And this distinction is critical. As for actually spotting the apex, sometimes the apex is very obvious. There will be a sausage curb on the inside marking exactly where you should clip, or the corner is simply so tight that the apex is unmistakable. There's really only one place your car can go through that corner. But of course, many corners don't make it that easy. Fast, flowing corners, long sweepers or corners with unclear inside edges can make the apex difficult to identify. And it's in these cases that you will need to establish your own reference, a specific painted line, where two curb collars meet, a particular section of rumble strip, a track surface change, whatever gives you a consistent visual target. And here is what separates smooth, fast drivers from amateurs. You want to rotate the car around the apex, not rotate into the apex. When you rotate around the apex, your car is already turned and tracking through the corner as you reach that inside point. You're just using it as an anchor that your line flows around smoothly. When you rotate into the apex, this almost always means that you are taking the corner too tight. And that means you will either have to slow down mid-corner because your line is too sharp, or you will run out of track on exit because you have compromised your exit angle. Think of the apex as a point your car gently kisses while already on its arc through the corner, not a target you aim for and turn toward. The rotation of the car should be largely complete by the time that you actually reach the apex. You're just maintaining your line through it, not forcing your own zigzag line onto it. And the main reason why I'm focusing so much on rotating around the apex, not into it, is because this is my personal weakness. Almost everything I do while driving is subconscious at this point, but for corner entry I keep having to tell myself every single corner, turn around the apex, you donkey. Very often, the apex is also the moment where you start applying the throttle for the first time again. In those scenarios, it essentially marks the middle of the corner. However, this isn't always true. Some corners will have a double apex or even a triple apex. Multiple inside points you will need to hit as the corner unfolds. And in these cases, it's almost always the last apex when you begin throttle application again. And until then, you're just managing your line through the sequence, while also maintaining or adjusting the speed as is needed. And this makes identifying your apex or apexes more important. It's not just about a geometric reference that makes the corner easier to go through, it's very often your cue to transition from mid-corner to corner exit. But this also assumes that the car is stable at that point. Get to the apex with the car stopped and rotated properly, and you can start unwinding the steering wheel and getting back on the throttle. If you arrive still sliding, you will have to wait for the car to stabilize, costing you exit speed and as a result time down the next straight. And in my opinion, this is where the truly elite drivers make the difference. They are able to keep the car stable and compliant at mid-corner speeds that we cannot even fathom. But sadly, the place where you go back on the throttle isn't always the apex itself. Sometimes your throttle marker will be an advertiser board on the outside of the track, sometimes it's a specific curb edge, and sometimes it's something else entirely. A track surface change, a marshal post, whatever you can find basically. And this is especially critical in long, patient corners where getting back on the throttle too early will ruin your exit. In these corners, having a dedicated throttle application marker and not just the apex can be extremely useful in maximizing your exit speed, because there is a very real chance that in a corner you might clip the apex, but you're not ready for throttle yet. You will need to wait. These references will give you the discipline to stay patient and only accelerate when the car can actually handle it, rather than getting greedy and getting on the power too early, only to have to lift again or run wide. Luckily, not every corner needs a separate throttle application marker. Many times, most of the time, the apex works perfectly fine. But in corners where patience is key, establish that marker. It's the difference between a good exit and a compromised one. Most of the time, your exit marker is simply the outside edge of the track, the white line marking the track limit, or the outside curves where you'll run out of usable track. You're steering towards this point, as you are progressively opening up the steering wheel as you accelerate, trying to use every inch of track available to maximize your speed. And using all of the track on exit is critical. If you're leaving a car's width on the outside, you're forcing yourself to take a tighter line through the corner, which means lower average speed. And the exit reference just reminds you, I need to track all the way out to that white line. It's just permission to use the full width of the circuit. After you've completed your exit, you need to set yourself up for the next corner. This is where setup markers come in, and you can use them for every corner, whether it's a simple isolated corner or part of a complex sequence. A setup marker tells you where you need to be positioned on track before you even arrive to the braking zone. But it's not just about position, it's mainly about direction and preparation. For example, you tell yourself, I need to be on the right side of the track, lined up straight, ready for my braking marker. And braking in a straight line is critical to getting the car stopped quickly, because if you're still transitioning or correcting your position when you reach your braking point, you cannot brake at maximum force. You will either have to brake earlier or less aggressively, and that will cost you time. And just as using corner exit references will help you maximize using all of the road on exit, using corner setup markers before entering the braking zone can help you maximize the track width on entry. And when you nail your setup marker, you are already positioned at the far edge of the track, giving yourself the widest possible entry angle into the corner. This wide entry means you can carry more speed and brake later and less, but only if you are lined up correctly at your setup marker first. If there is a straight that follows your corner exit, you will typically have enough time and space to complete your exit fully and then reposition your car for the next setup marker. You can essentially just use all of the track on your exit and still get lined up correctly for the next braking zone. But sometimes, and especially in quick direction changes, you will need to compromise your exit marker in order to hit your setup marker properly and be lined up for the braking zone. A good example of this is No Name or Jackie X corner on Spa-Francorchamps. If you track out all the way to the outside edge after Bruxelles, you will be in the wrong position for the No Name corner. You will then have to make a sharp transition to get back to the correct side of the track, and you might still be turning or repositioning when you reach your braking marker, which then means you will not be braking optimally. And it's in these cases that you are deliberately compromising your exit marker. You're thinking to yourself, okay, let's not go too wide here coming out of Brussels, so I'm already positioned correctly for No Name. You are essentially sacrificing a bit of exit speed from the first corner in order to optimize the average speed through the second corner. And for me personally, setup markers matter for every corner. They are essentially the bridge between one corner's exit, the straight, and the next corner's entry moment. And it's the moment where you transition from accelerating to preparing for braking. If you apply all of this correctly, throughout the entire corner sequence, your eyes will smoothly glide from one marker to the next in a fluid fashion. And in doing so, you will subconsciously be drawing the line that you will be driving towards. And this is important. You want to get this down to a subconscious state, where you're not thinking, look here, now look here. No, it just happens naturally as you progress through each phase of the corner. Some steps of this cycle will be very smooth and gradual, but others will also be quick and drastic. As you are approaching your braking marker, your eyes will be tracking it as it gets closer and closer, shifting smoothly towards the side as you approach it. And then the moment you actually pass it, you get a very rapid eye movement when you hit your braking zone and start rotating the car. Instead of now looking in your peripheral vision, you are looking straight ahead and looking to deduce any information that you can from the car and what it's doing. As you see the car slowing down, your eyes will slowly glide towards the apex, and as you are rotating through the corner, your eyes will slowly and smoothly track the inside line and see if there's any apexes on the inside. You are essentially visually tracing the path you want your car to follow. And then another rapid flick. As you pass the apex and begin unwinding your steering wheel, your eyes will quickly snap from the inside line to the outside line of the track. And it is this pattern of smooth tracking and then very rapid shifts that is the natural rhythm of proper vision technique. And trust me when I say you will not be thinking about this consciously once you are actually driving, but just using these markers effectively forces you to use proper vision technique. And here is something fundamental about driving and, to be honest, hand-eye coordination overall. The car will naturally want to follow where you are looking. If you are staring at the apex, the car tracks towards the apex. If you are looking at the exit, the car will flow towards the exit. This is not magic, it's just because your hands will subconsciously make tiny steering corrections based on where your visual focus actually is. Your brain is essentially constantly processing, I'm looking here, I need to go here. And your hands will just respond accordingly without you consciously commanding them. And by using these references deliberately, your vision is already ahead of the car, scanning for the next reference point, and the car will follow naturally. And this is where the smoothness comes from, because you're not fighting the steering wheel to stay on line, you're just looking where you want to go, and the car will follow the inputs of your hands. And for the last chapter in this block, scanning. Because here's a mistake many drivers make. They think the straight is where they can relax and just stare ahead. This is wrong. Even on the straight, you should almost never just be looking straight ahead. Your eyes should constantly be scanning and gathering information, processing your surroundings and preparing for what's coming next. And even more so in multi-class racing. On a straight, your visual attention will shift through multiple information sources. The markers and references for the next corner, as we have previously discussed. Your mirrors, to check if someone is close behind you. Are they attempting a move? Are they doing a dive bomb? Or do I have a nice gap? Your delta or time difference, where you quickly check if you are gaining or losing time, and if so, where did that happen? And this one is very important. The user interface, what is your fuel level, what are your tire temperatures, how many more laps to go, do you have any damage, etc, etc. And then you also have the track conditions ahead. Is there a car stopped on track? Do you see a yellow flag? Why is that? Maybe you see some smoke in the distance. Those are all extra bits of information that can save you from a crash. And this isn't just a checklist you consciously run through every straight. It's a scanning pattern, and it's something that your eyes will develop naturally. Glance at the mirror quickly, check the delta, look ahead to the setup marker, check the mirror again for a dive bomb, scan for yellow flags or crashes in the distance, and then start locating your braking marker. Quick, fluid eye movements, gathering information constantly. We haven't really touched on the delta, but the delta is essentially your real-time feedback loop where you learn if what you just did gained or lost you time. Did that corner exit work? You will immediately see it in the delta. Did you brake too early? If so, the delta will go into the red. And this is also the quickest thing you can glance and read. You don't need to study it at all or stare at it, you just need to register the information and connect it to what you just did. I tried braking later at turn 3, the delta went green by 0.2 and I kept my speed on the exit. So that worked, keep that. And this real-time feedback loop is how you improve during a session. You're constantly testing and scanning the delta and adjusting based on immediate results. But luckily, if you play a lot of real-time strategy games or first-person shooters, or League of Legends, you are most likely already very good at this. Because those games also demand constant visual scanning, checking your minimap, tracking enemy positions, seeing how much money you have, and watching multiple areas of the screen simultaneously. That is exactly the same skill set. But if you are known to be a daydreamer who stares off into the distance, this might be a struggle and you will really have to force yourself to start scanning more and more. But luckily it's very much a trainable skill. Simply start by consciously forcing yourself to check mirrors and delta on every straight. Over time it becomes automatic and you can add more and more stuff. And drivers like Fernando Alonso are famous for being able to process insane amounts of information while they are driving. Somehow they just see on the screens on the side of the track whether someone got a penalty, whether they pitted too early, whether they crashed, etc, etc. He's not just experiencing his own race, no, he's experiencing the race as a whole. And that is also exactly the reason why we are scanning in the first place. Awareness and preparation. Awareness simply means that you know what's happening around you. And because of that, you're not surprised when someone dives it up the inside, because you already saw him closing into you from the last corner into the next straight. You are not caught off guard by a crashed car in the middle of the road because you have been scanning the flags. And I'm speaking from experience here. You know exactly where you are gaining or losing time because you have been watching the delta. Or if you are really experienced, you have been watching the intervals between you and the car you are chasing down or trying to defend from, learning slowly where you are faster and where your opponent is faster. And preparation simply means thinking in advance as much as possible. You've already spotted your setup marker, you know where you need to be, you have already positioned your car accordingly. And mentally you have already rehearsed your braking point. And by the time you actually reach it, you're not just reacting, you're just executing a plan that you have already made. And racing is of course a dynamic sport. Suddenly there can be a car up the inside on the corner standing still, so you just have to adapt on the fly, and that is why it's so important to think ahead. Drivers who are just staring on the straight or are just looking at their delta only are missing critical information and arriving at corners unprepared. This then makes them reactive instead of proactive. And it is this scanning that will keep you ahead of the car, ahead of your competitors, and ahead of any problems before they actually arrive. This might be a dumb example, but having amazing racecraft is absolutely useless if you don't see your opponents and just run into them. Being super quick is also useless if you run out of fuel because you didn't check your AI. And you will be guessing if you don't know what the car is doing, what the weather is like 5 minutes from now, if your tires are overheating, if your engine is overheating, etc, etc. Scanning is not optional for serious racing. It's a fundamental skill. The straight isn't just rest time, it's information gathering time. Use it. So, we have covered quite a lot already in this guide, and let's just put it all together. Sim racing essentially presents a unique challenge. You are missing the visual feedback and physical feedback that you would have in real life that make judging speed and distance easy, and as a result your brain has to recalibrate what it means to go 200 km an hour in the sim instead of in real life, without any fear or without any of your survival instincts screaming at you. But this adaptation will take time, hundreds and maybe even thousands of laps. But you can accelerate this learning process dramatically by driving and learning in a systemic way. Every phase of a corner can have a marker. Braking and gear selection, which are your preparation before the corner even begins. The turn-in, where you begin rotating into the corner and you will have to adapt to the speed that you are actually carrying. The apex, your geometric anchor that leads you around the corner. Your throttle application marker, which is very often the apex, but not always. The corner exit, where you are heading as you are coming out of the corner. And the setup phase, where you position and prepare yourself for the next corner and braking zone. These markers will then give you the consistency that will allow your brain to build intuition over time. And on top of that, they enforce proper vision technique, with your eyes smoothly gliding from one reference to the other and the car naturally following where you are looking. And even on the straights, you should not be resting your eyes, you should be scanning. Mirrors, delta, UI, anything around you, yellow flags, whatever it is, you should constantly be gathering information. Stay aware, stay prepared. And so here's the path forward. Learn tracks systematically, start conservative, build up speed lap by lap, and simply stay on the track. Underdriving will naturally allow you to adapt and learn much quicker than constantly forcing yourself to overdrive. Each clean lap builds your mental library of what cars can actually do, and this knowledge transfers remarkably well to other cars and other tracks. Once you have then found the natural limits, then you can start to probe a little bit beyond it. Brake a little bit later than normal, see if the car still wants to stick, and that way you can find those extra tenths in a consistent, progressive way. And just remember, we haven't really even talked about racing lines, driving technique or anything along those lines. And that is intentional, because if you cannot spot and act upon your markers correctly and consistently, all of the theory that I will provide later on will be absolutely useless. Master markers and reference points, build consistency, develop proper vision and scanning habits, and once we have talked about driving fundamentals and you can reliably hit your markers every time, then we will start talking about racing line and optimizing it. And that is also what is coming in the next block, where we will be covering driving fundamentals, because vision and markers will give you the framework, but of course you still need to execute the actual techniques of car control, driver inputs, and actually starting to push for pace. So in the next block we are going to focus on how to drive, not just where to look. And to do this, we will be using the good old Mazda MX-5. And I do realize that the Mazda MX-5 might seem like a bit of a weird choice, but it's fully intentional. It's slow, it's basic, it doesn't have any downforce, and that is exactly what makes it perfect to learn the driving fundamentals. Also, another benefit is that it is available in almost every sim racing title. And so you don't have to switch games in order to try this car. It will most likely be available in the sim racing title of your choice. In my opinion, the MX-5 or the Mazda Miata is perfect for learning. It teaches you to be smooth, but also to carry a ton of corner speed, and it will really punish you for making fundamental driving mistakes. Master these fundamentals in a car like the MX-5, and when you hop in a GT3 or whatever, it will be much easier. This has been Fundamentals to Speed. Master these fundamentals first and the speed will come. Now get out there and practice. And I hope to see you on track soon.